Excited to learn more about the transitions you've made since the last time we hung out.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that the character isn't just a changing of the guard from the perspective of your own self, internal dialogue and thoughts and all those different things. But the interesting component for me is how other people respond to it too. Meaning it's not just you that changes, but it's also now how everyone is like now looking at you. Because like you can have one thought, or I have a frame of mind as to who Germ is, and the ironic thing is that you even called him a character. It's like he's like the Kramer of this thing, like that in and of itself is hilarious. But it's what it represents to other people that also becomes like a very relevant.
Well, it's funny. We were actually talking about that just earlier about how when you change your like mindset of how people are going to perceive you, that's what changes other people's perception of you.
Exactly.
And so when you step into that new character, so with you, Professor G, you're like, no, people respect what I have to say, so I'm going to say it. And so you step into that, and that's what Professor G thinks, and that's why you emit that energy.
And so you really see that like children have no difficulty in assuming a different ego identity. They can do it at the drop of a hat. Make-believe is no problem for them. But something happens to us. We become inflexible. We become locked into a single character, a single idea of who we are. And with that, our possibilities shrink. So this is really about taking back that ability to become who you need to be for what your life is calling to you right now. I think I started exploring this at a young age because I have a really wild imagination, and I always have. And my make-believe is like next level. It was like I was one of those kids that was just like, there was no off button for the make-believe. So they're like, all right, like my parents would be like, calm down, come to dinner. And I'm like, we still have to defeat the rebels, Mom. Like, this isn't going to change anything. Dinner is irrelevant right now. Do you understand what's happening? And so like I've always had that. And I think when I first really started playing a cool character was when I was in elementary school. Well, actually, it was probably like 8th grade. Yeah, 8th grade. And I remember like learning about a lot of these topics that now, people who are on the awakening or who are figuring out what's really going on the planet know about. But I started studying history and learning about secret societies. And I was just like so inspired that I'm like, I've got to tell these kids what's up. And I realized that it would be more effective rather than talk to groups if I would talk to them one at a time. So I would pull kids who I thought were like high potential individuals in my class, and I'd be like, we got to go talk. And I'd pull them out to like the dugout out in the baseball field. And I'd like, we were 8th grade, right? Most kids at that age, we're just like playing sports and just getting our first crushes on girls and going out with, that was what was going on, but in the consciousness. But in my world,
Have you seen Zeitgeist?
dude,
Set up in there.
straight up. But it was like marketer. You guys would appreciate the whole way it worked, because it was like qualifying questions. The kids would come out. I'd be like, oh, look, Will, you want an average American life? You want to just work your regular job, like have your wife, your kids, your dog, like, is that enough for you? Kids would be like, no, I want more. I'm like, okay, good. I'm like, red pill or blue pill? Do you want to know what's really going on? Like, and I would take them through this series of questions in which they would opt in to the learning.
Yep.
And then I would do my little Morpheus thing. So that was kind of how I started that path. But yeah, character transformation is a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting thing. I think that a lot of people also go through it when they're at a point of crisis in their life, and you realize that you're at a dead end and you have no choice but to reinvent yourself. And so in that sense, it can be like a really beautiful new chapter of somebody where like maybe they've just been like sitting at home for the last 10 years or 20 years. Like, parents go through this when kids leave the nest, and it's like, okay, but who do you get to be now? Mm-hmm. Kids are gone, right?
Yeah, people reinvent their purpose and what that looks like. And to do that, there's no more effective of a way than to adopt a new persona. Mm-hmm. And if you really think about it, like you mentioned, Beyonce, Jay-Z, whoever it is, right? Like, they're all characters.
Yeah.
Eminem is playing a character, and we see that character. Now, is it part of his real life thoughts? Yes, it's a shade of who he is. Is he always angry and spitting fire? No. You know what I mean? I'm sure he's smiling and jovial in certain moments, but the character that shows up, the character that we know, is a particular shade of person. And, most actors that
they all have actor
they're all
names.
just characters that we're in love with the character they play often, not the character they are. We have this persona of who an actor might be. And, maybe part of that is like a real sense or feeling. But I think a lot of it is also based on just like what we were told in the story and how that story was told. We definitely have an affinity for certain characters and hate others. You play a villain one time in a movie and you might be hated for the rest of your life, and I think it's a real thing.
I like what up earlier as well is that even naturally throughout life, this kind of happens. And so where some of us, like I remember from when we moved from Canada when I was 11, up until that moment, I was not a popular kid. And I was like, fuck this. I don't want to live this anymore. We're moving country. Nobody there knows me. I get to be whoever I want. And so that's more of a forced one. But even naturally throughout life, every time you switch school, when your kids leave the nest, when you start having kids, you get to choose. Like there's all these moments where we're given the opportunity to be a different person than who we were or change things. But people don't even notice it. Like they do it subconsciously. But when you can actually capitalize on those moments, you can create them as well. But if you can capitalize on them, that's like a double win right there.
If you're traveling around or if you're in a bigger city or you get asked the question frequently, for anybody that goes out and is sociable to even the slightest, you get asked the question, what do you do? Or who are you? And you get that chance to tell your story every time again and again. So instead of using those, something Mark and I jam about a lot.
I literally have a video that we just edited that says those exact things.
Exactly, yeah. So
we clearly agree.
Yeah, but it's so basically you have an opportunity with each of those questions to really embody who you are becoming or who you are trying to achieve as opposed to the past stories of it. So if let's say that you want to save the environment, but you're working at a job that you're not so pleased with or you're not so excited about, instead of just saying, oh, I work at this place or, oh, I do this, you can actually use that experience, that what do you do, to be like, how much time you got? And you can really go into like using each as an example to really hone in that story and to build and to look at look in somebody's eyes and like build off the alls and see where you lose them, see where you gain them. And that each one of those is an example, whether it's a social media post or a physical interaction, that you can consistently make up this world and play in this playground of conversations in life.
And then that is a perfect example of whether it opens doors or not. Like you use the different ones and you play with it and you see, oh shit, I lost them there. Okay, next time, got to tweak it. And then eventually it just leads you down like you want to save the environment. You're talking to the right people. You've got the right story and it opens the doors.
Yeah. And you never know what it's going to lead to as well. It's like if you're trying to create something, you might have some blockage in your next step or your career or some like thing you have to overcome internally. And then you never know who that person can connect with or something you do, or like what enlightenment conversation. Maybe they're interested in something as well, but using each of those opportunities, you never know what's going to spawn by the opportunity to tell your story, or tell you who you're becoming or who you are currently.
It's like this, right? There's a theory about the nature of the universe there are parallel universes, and there is other versions of you that exist in those other quantum universes, which sounds really esoteric, but have you ever had the feeling that there's another version of you out there that's living a different life and made different choices? Or have you ever wondered what it would be like if in this timeline, when you turned right and you went to this school and got this career or married this person, what if you had turned left and what would have happened? And so this theory is saying there's a version of you that turned left that you can also tap back into. And that's part of why I have gone down the path I have, is that there came a moment that started like 5 years ago where there was like this moment in my path where it split, and I internally felt the split. I internally heard this name, James Seraph. There was a whole musical album that channeled through me when I was living in an island called Malta, and I suddenly like realized this whole new path was opening, but I was scared of it. Or I should say I just wasn't really ready to let that in. And so I just sat with the knowledge that there was this other me. And then it's been like consistently throughout the last 5 years, there's been like this feeling of this split of like, I'm living in this way. I'm making choices this way, but James wouldn't do that. I would do it a totally different way. I'm struggling financially over here, but James already has all the answers to those problems. He's already solved all those things, right? I'm like, ho-hum putting along in my little corner of the universe, like feeling like I'm not living up to my potential. And like James is that other me that's like takes the shortest path and goes right to the top to make the biggest possible difference for humanity. So that's like, it's been the process of being like, all right, I'm going to honor that creative impulse. And there's a part of it that's very vulnerable, right? When you decide you're going to do something new, because you're like, you're like, if you're not really grounded in it and you're going to change, like people will question it. People will be like, why are you acting different?
Yeah.
What's going on? Hey,
You're not the
okay?
person I know. You are normally this way, right? Yeah. No, I mean, it is difficult to change your character in the minds of others, and that requires some level of time and experience and kind of a different way of feeling. But I think one of the things that stands out to me is also how like we very quickly in our minds also paint characters on other people, right? So it's like British accent, probably from Britain, probably this, you know what I mean? Like we make like all these massive associations because that's the shortcut our brain gets to take or tries to take to understand the world around us, right? So rather than over-processing, we're like constantly in this position where it's like we have to like think about that and recognize that we have a ton of bias in everything we're doing.
What were we talking about the other day? Where it's like a lot of what we think of other people, or it was either Tim Ferriss or somebody that I had heard, and then we were kind of talking about it, how you project so much of a person onto them. So past relationship or like old relationships. So people from my high school, for example, I might relate to them in a certain way because they were like that then, and the way I've progressed, I just assume that their progression based on that person, they're now like this. When it's like, whoa, like no, that's not my story to write.
I think it was Lucian that said something about it on
Oh,
his
yeah,
Facebook post
he
about
did
it. So
say
he
it
was
on his
talking about
Facebook
he was
post.
holding back on like acting a certain way for past friends, stuff like that, because he wouldn't want to share as much with past friends or something like that because he had this like story in their head. When realistically, more people are open than you expect, and like it's our own fear stopping us from sharing our own story, from sharing our gifts, and
Because we've assumed what their story is now based on who they used to be.
It's interesting. I saw this meme the other day, and it was that everybody has a different perception. Everybody has a different story on you. Nobody sees you the exact same way. Between the touch points that we have and the accumulation of information that we have, that each person sees you in an extremely unique way. It can be kind of scary, and that can be kind of disempowering, or it can be completely empowering how you look at it. But you're never, so kind of it's like, everybody's going to see you in their own way regardless, so you might as well make it a cool one, and for yourself.
I feel like it's easier to change if everybody sees you a different way.
That's what you're thinking about in an empowered
Well,
way.
it's not as powerful. It's not as powerful for everyone to see you in a different way as if you can try and get like the smallest of associations with like Nike swoosh, just do it, right? Like those are like the most powerful brands are the ones where as much as you might feel a particular way beyond those things, everything beneath, or like maybe I hate Nike because of what they did with Colin Kaepernick, or maybe you love Nike because they did with Colin Kaepernick and that kind of thing. But either way, they still have Nike swoosh, just do it, then whatever they think. And so that's like brand building at the highest of levels, which is, if you can establish a flag or a logo or an emblem, and then establish a very core idea, right? Then it becomes, you literally embody that idea. It literally becomes the truth. And so I think it's like no mistake that, Beyonce, they like seeded the word queen for her persona, right? Like I think there's so much of that.
Fierce?
Seeded
Sasha
the word
Fierce?
queen.
That she's like the queen of hip hop and
so
and
her
music
brand,
and whatever. Yeah,
right?
Okay.
Queen
her
Bee.
brand, her queen bee, and that whole thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Like some of this is organic for sure, but some of it is also like now that I know, like I understand the world of marketing and PR so much more, I totally see how, the first time it was ever written in a magazine or on a newspaper or something like that, that it might have been planted, and it might have been planted multiple times over. And that's kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah. Like,
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I have a question about yours, and it kind of goes back a little. So if you have something to say on that, you should go first.
No, I was just going to go off and talk about torches of freedom and how psyops are conducted on the population. This is probably more interesting.
You were saying that you were on the island, this whisper came to you, and that's when you realized the split happened. And then as you kept living, like, no, I'm sticking with Alex for now because James kind of creeps me out a little bit still. Your hand motions did this, but do you feel like it was getting further and further away and there was a moment where you're like, no, I have to jump over because I might lose it altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because the thing about timelines is this. Yeah, you can miss you can miss certain gates. Okay? And this is for you listening. You can miss certain gates in your life that you're meant to walk through. Like, for instance, if you resist the creative impulses that are coming to your soul, you can resist for a little while. And then eventually, if you like go for it, it's like, okay, the kid was at the top of the diving board and eventually he was scared for a while. And then the other kids yelled at him enough. And then he finally jumped, right? That's like you when you are resisting something that's really wants to be born in your life for a while, but you eventually do it. But when you get to a point, like let's say a lot of people have a creative impulse for something for 20 years, let's say, and they just fight it and push it down and resist it, or an impulse to do something new in their life, a sport, a different career. There is a point where like the gates will close on you in the sense that the universal timeline collapses. You know, I'll give you another example of this, ground it a little bit more. There are this is another theory, but I feel that this is true. Okay. So try this on for size. There are roles that and energies that need to come through for this human race, for our collective. And the energies and the roles don't care who takes them on as long as someone takes them on. And if you are not going to step up to the plate of what that thing is, of that energy is that you can play, or that role that you can play, the universe is going to be like, okay, so you're not going for it. All right, let's find somebody else, right? And it's not personal. Like if Martin Luther King hadn't stepped up to the plate and embraced his calling, the theory goes that if somehow in the quantum, some other leader from the African American community would have felt this spiritual power fucking rising in their soul and gone and helped to achieve a similar result, right? So this is a theory, and I like the theory because what it leads you to is the realization that I can't wait around. I got to be honest with myself about what I'm really being called to right now in my life. Yes.
It's a good one.
I've definitely missed that gate a couple of times on certain things for sure.
Me too.
Yeah. It's painful. It's painful. It's painful because you have these moments where I'm thinking of a particular situation last year, soon after you left Montreal, and we ended up going on this trip to film a thing, and I knew that there was going to be a lot of challenges with that trip. Like I was like, okay, this trip is going to be like really difficult, and really it was at this time where I kind of wanted to like lean deeper into some stuff, but I was like, but I'm also open to like, whatever I'm open to surrender, meaning rather than like trying to just like go through the gate, let me just see what happens if I do nothing, and let's see what the universe does. And all of it happened for me. All of it happened to me in a weird way. But most importantly, and this is like the cliche thing, people think about like, but it happens through you, right? And I believe that what's happening to you is when you're really outside of, like, you're really far from the gate and you just keep missing, you keep ignoring. It's like you're literally getting to the edge of the diving board.
Yeah.
And then you're walking back down.
Yeah.
Like,
and then your mom is like, that's it. We're taking you home. You're done.
Yeah. That's when things happen to you, right? When things happen for you, it's like you're there, and then your like crush looks at you. You're at the edge of the diving board. Your crush looks at you, but maybe she doesn't like you as much because you weren't as brave. So it happened for you in that moment. You still jumped, but maybe the timeline, you just missed the gate. Now, if you didn't do that, she might have seen it in a different way, and then you jumped, and then she actually likes you, and again, that happened for you, right? But if you just get up to the top, you get there, you have that moment, which is you have the fear, you have the uncertainty, you look into the void, you're like, I don't really know. And then you jump anyway, and you jump anyway, not because of the external.
Yeah.
Everything else was an external input.
Yeah.
But you're like, oh, this is what feels like I need to do. This is the response that I want to have. to this challenge, to this test,
Right.
then that's when life is happening through you. That's how I feel about it.
If you're cognizant of that, then you're clear that this is a moment in your hero's journey
Yes.
for you to do the action. But if you're not looking for the reflection, you're not like taking that time. Yeah, people miss gates all day. I've heard it said from some well-known psychotherapists that when they interview people, they say that only 1 in 10 person fulfills their purpose in life that they intended to, like at the end, and feels that level of contentment on average, right? So it's like a lot of people are missing a lot of gates because this world is set up in a way that doesn't necessarily give people the opportunity to like really reflect and like make their best decisions. So I'm not going to put it all on the individual, but at the end of the day,
I don't know.
It's up to you.
Yeah, because even in your story, every single time they wrote it. They wrote that they were going to walk back down the stairs, or that they were going to let somebody else peer pressure them into doing it, or like, and I guess in my version of the law of attraction, because you hear so many different theories on that, that's what that means. Like the energy you're going to put into that is exactly what you're getting back out of it. And so they have attracted, and everybody when they're missing gates or jumping in through them and portals and whatever, they are literally attracting whatever they're putting into it.
Is there a right and a wrong gate? And if so, how do you feel into that right answer? Is it a gut thing, or is like, what do you do to intentionally tap into what you feel is to your highest excitement? Or is it like with a muscle test, or is it a gut thing? Is there a right and a wrong?
yeah. Well, that's an interesting question that I explore a lot, particularly right now, because I'm helping guide a lot of people who are in my audience and making big life changes, and they're asking the same question. Is this right? Is this wrong? Well, first we have to decide, is there a right and there a wrong? And I think universally, no, because for one person, being a homeless bum picking up trash is the highest excitement, and for another person, it's not. So it's really right and wrong is, first of all, based in you. It's subjective. It's based on your unique soul. But I believe there is a more honest self-expression of life that you could take, and a less honest, less
Definitely.
courageous expression
More
of
right
life.
and wrong for you.
Yes.
Not more right and wrong globally.
Yeah.
But more right and wrong from the perspective of what you're doing.
Yes.
I mean, I think my answer to that is it's not external. It is an internal force.
So how do you tap into that internally?
I mean, for me, it's creating enough space for you to even have the opportunity to hear the signal.
Yeah, it's
Meaning
more
it's like refining the knobs, and if like you're spending so much time flipping the channel and like constantly changing the thing, and like it's like a radio. That's how I kind of attune to it.
I mean, I think it's a similar thing probably with a spiritual practice or a physical practice, where you have to like take the information that's out there and then kind of decipher what is best for you. So it's kind of like you can ask people what works for them, and some people have tapped into that level and thought about it enough to like see their own process of their own method to coming to that conclusion. But it's not something that you can outsource probably. It's just you can collect the information, test and see, and stay curious and see what works best for you. So I guess I was just kind of asking like what your own process was for it, because it might be interesting, might resonate with some, or it might not resonate with others, and that's life. We all got to go through it ourselves, but you can surround yourself with certain information and certain guidance to help achieve a certain result.
Totally. I do think there is some level of outsourcing that is possible.
Oh, yeah.
From the perspective of if the person you are outsourcing to is the right person, and now how do you know who's the right person?
Yeah, but
what I mean by that is
mine's a question of like responsibility as well. So you can outsource different things, but you can't outsource a direct right answer. You know, I guess I just want to clarify that point. Is that, but at the end of the day, we each have a individual sovereignty and responsibility.
Yes.
Is just to clarify what I was saying.
Totally. Yeah. And the outsourcing piece to me, or what I wanted to add to that, was just the idea of like, if that person is actually part of your tribe, the person you were asking, then their information as it lands to you will feel different than the information that somebody else lands to you. Because I can listen, like, for example, Tim Ferriss is not part of my tribe in my way. Like the way I carry myself and the way he carries himself, we are not part of the exact same tribe. We're friendly tribes, like his tribe and the way he carries himself is part of the way I think, but it's not fully the way I think. But when I met at the time Alex Fairman, at this time, and I believe when I spoke to you, James Seraph, right? In that moment, I felt your energy shift, because we had spoken a little bit before that at the event, not, you know, with some little, you know, connections, but in that moment, everything collides, right? Like, there was no, like, the entire time until that moment where we had that conversation right after that circle, we weren't really connected. But then all of a sudden in that moment, everything collides, and now you know.
Yeah.
And now there's no there's no amount of anything I can do that will ever deny how or who I should ask for a certain piece of advice, and where I should take that from and where I shouldn't take that from in some way, shape, or form. And so I have felt that with many, many people, you know, like Garrett is an example, Samantha's an example for me, Ryan, Schwartz, Phil Poas. Like, I can name like a bunch of people who I work with, but I can also name a ton of friends or people in my past that I'm like, oh, okay, you're different to me than anybody else. Like, I feel you in a different way.
Right. The tribe affinity is an interesting one, but to go back to like, okay, how do I figure out like what the hell I'm supposed to, what's my next real gate? If I was really like living with big steel balls, what gate would I be going through right now? Or ovaries, if that's you, maybe, I don't know. We can change the metaphor. Flowering, verdant, fertile ovaries. But either way, the point is like, there's ways to do this, right? So this is first, like divination is like one of the old school, like systems that every culture has their little version of tossing the coins or reading the coffee grinds or like, you know, because the idea is that God is in a constant conversation with us. And that the universe, if you have a problem with God, that's okay. Let me reframe that. The universe, the power that created you, is reflecting to your consciousness, because you have a super conscious genius mind, which you're using only a small percentage of. And the greater percentage of your intelligence that is asleep is trying to contact you, is trying to get you messages about what it is that you're being called to. And this is where seeing the signs and like understanding like, oh, what is synchronicity and why do I keep having these random people contact me and why do I keep seeing the same symbol? And if you dive down that rabbit hole, that's one way, right? To start to see what that right path is. Because I also believe that when you start out on it and you're scared, the universe throws you a bone if you're taking courageous action and is like, here, let me confirm to you that this is right. What? How did I get $1,000 in my bank account when I'm starting my business and I was totally broke from this random stranger and I didn't even... Okay, all right, I see you. Okay, right? And so that's the way that relationship gets built. And the more you lean in, the stronger it becomes, right? Until you're just one with the force, you know? And that's like a state that we aspire to, and maybe we live in for a few hours at a time, but like it's possible. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely methods, and I definitely agree with like outsourcing some aspects and finding your tribe and what resonates with you, and like some things might resonate, some things might not, and then to not get totally overthink something. So like at a certain point you have to like feel in the gut, you've kind of done your methodology, you've kind of went to some trusted sources, and then you got to jump because she's looking.
Yes.
And he's looking because it's a
I feel like Garrett's had this moment in his life where
multiple times.
Where his crush is literally at the pool looking up at him.
Yeah.
He goes through glass doors, though. He doesn't jump off the diving board.
Story. But I think that there's a certain time to jump, and then you can trust that process and learn from it. So interesting.
I do think no matter what or who you're outsourcing to, after you've gathered all your information, taking that step back and coming back to you is vital, though. Because nobody else is ever going to be responsible later if it all like messes up. It's you. And so you have to have made that decision yourself.
Totally.
And people who never do, like, they're never happy.
And it's not a mind decision. And that's like I suffer from that a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. I suffer from that a lot because one of my strengths is my capacity to process through mind. Right. But it's actually not most of my emotional development was younger, and I have spent less time in emotional development up until more recently. And so I would bring it down to a logic, like, oh, what does logic tell me I should do right now? You know, and then you look at the data and the different pieces. But then all of a sudden it's like, the other day, I'll give you an example. We're working with this guy, Matthew Scott Donnelly, so shout out to him. He's fucking phenomenal at what he does. And every time we work with this dude, every time we work with him, then like everything we're doing on social media, just like it's not even like it's a hockey stick curve to the moon.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, how, like what, you know what I mean? Like everything
Yeah.
I was calculating, we were doing all of this before.
Right.
And, yeah, we weren't doing it the same way, in the same cadence, but all of a sudden there's this like,
That's
and that's like the door. You know what I mean? Like when you
I know yeah.
like when that is there. So
the laws, the project, because we don't understand the universe at all. None of us, right?
Yeah.
We think we put all these rules on it, but like there's actually energy, and that this guy who's creating hockey stick growth curve
Yeah.
is carrying an energetic frequency that's producing a result.
yes,
That's like it.
but his energy without my energy and without Garrett's energy is not the same.
Right.
So when if you
Once
look
the
at
group chat
It's the
sparked up
layering
again,
of
it just things start happening. It's like hello.
I know it's just like,
Yeah,
like
everything's just taking
it's
off.
really wild. And you know, Garrett and I shared this the other day. I was like, whatever we're doing, we're not doing it without Matt. Like we have to understand that if we're going to try and do things in this innovate in this way, we can intellectualize it all day. But
Yeah.
we can look at the ROAS, return on ad spend, and look at, oh, did this get more reach or what meme and
Yeah.
and I study it like there's no tomorrow. I know Garrett does too. But the idea of over intellectualizing it removes the gut. And so, you know, I kind of pulled a very Mark move, which is, oh, I don't care if the company can't afford it, I can afford it. So fuck it, let's do it. Because I know that that's just like the way we have to go, right? Like there's no ifs or buts about it. And so I can't, there's no amount of like intellectualizing it that I will accept if I don't just jump the gate.
And I love that about
know
you.
what I mean?
I love that
Yeah.
about you. That's one of the things that I think is like really special about you, because you're a strategic, logical, wise thinker. But at the end of the day, you will make decisions purely on your gut, and you'll say,
100%.
"We'll figure it out." And that's like the game of entrepreneurship. Like, how many times have you had to do that?
Oh. Like, literally all the time.
Yeah,
all
the time, right? And that's like these are these gates, right? And that's part of how you get through the gates too. Is it's like, oh, there's the girl. I'm like, my heart's pounding in my chest. Execute, right? It's like there are these gates you just got to jump through, and so.
And sometimes they're more obvious than others.
And
Particularly
sometimes
when
they're more obvious
when you
than
look
others.
Back, like,
Yeah.
I see gates in like, the working relationship Garrett and I have had together. There was moments in time where it's like,
You guys could have split ways, right?
well,
Like,
no, that's the whole point. It's like,
Yeah.
here's this investment, there's this opportunity, and it's like, are we going to jump in the same car? Or are we going to go in a different direction?
Yeah.
And so far, he's sitting here right now.
Yeah.
We've clearly jumped in the same direction, and sometimes a little more in his direction, sometimes a little bit more in mine. But the answer was that in those moments, it was his decision, and I kind of put it in his decision because I kind of had already made my decisions in certain moments. Because I was more used to the feeling of like, okay, yes, this is one of those moments. It's fucking scary, but it's just go.
Yeah.
And his decision completely changes the output and the outcome, and it changes my outcome.
Right.
Because that's the other thing, is that sometimes you're at that diving board with other people.
Yes.
And that's the hardest
Yeah,
part.
it's-
Yeah.
'Cause it's
We're synchronized
are you gonna
diving
jump? 'Cause
here.
I'm gonna jump.
Yes.
You need to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the moment where you're like, ugh.
And that's
I love that analogy.
Yeah, and that's where you got to share your deepest feelings. You got to be able to bare your soul for that person. I literally just had this experience like within 24 hours ago, and you've got to be able to like share, like, this is where I'm feeling, this is where I'm really at. I'm not sure, but these are the emotions, these are my desires. What are yours? Okay, like we'll find the alignment in this honesty. Like,
Yeah.
if it's like if you're in the conversation with your like husband or wife, and you're like, what are we doing? It's like you got to get super, super real for that clarity to emerge in the way that it's supposed to.
And I do want to mention one other quick caveat to this, which is sometimes the right decision or the right gate is to not jump. Like I do want to preface that, like,
Oh, yeah.
I am the type of person, and I noticed this, I'm the type of person who's like, let's just jump. Because I'm actually, eventually you find more comfort in jumping. In a weird way, right? So it's like,
Interesting.
Because it's
eventually I'm like,
scarier to stay.
it's almost like I don't
Yeah.
want to be that way because I want to be like, and this is the mentality of like the struggling artist, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I want to just be the person who stumbles and falls and does whatever. And some people have that built in, that whatever their response is, that becomes automatic too.
This is
How do
so-
you remove the automatic
Right.
autopilot of, I get to this thing, this is the feeling I normally get. Do I jump? Yes. Every other time I did, it worked out. But that doesn't mean that's what you should do.
But so, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, like, that's where you take about the feeling, like, that's where it jumps. But, and maybe this is just my personal thing, and it kind of comes back to the muscle test you were talking about, because I know you do that a lot. But
EG.
Oh yeah, AG, yeah.
but the feeling is like the body always knows first. The brain is just like a part of the whole thing, but it's not what actually runs the ship. And so the body always knows first. And if you listen to, like, when you're like, oh, like my gut, like usually I jump and that's thing, but something just doesn't feel right about jumping this time. But if, because that's your comfort zone, you're going to do it, it's still the wrong decision. But that feeling is different. Like that internal, your body's like, no.
Well,
But you
most
still
people
do
don't
it.
spend enough
So
time
true.
discerning what the difference is there. And I think the other thing is, like, we could, well, in superhero category, we call it the postmortem, right? Okay, we did something, what happened?
Yeah.
Right? Whether it worked or not, and postmortem is kind of a dark term for it, but it's like, what
Oh, a
happened,
little
and
dark.
how do we analyze that component? Because unless you create that, unless you relink the pathway to, I did this thing, and by the way, these are the things that planned out.
Yeah.
You might completely see it differently. Like,
Right.
I can see the decision where I jumped
Yeah.
at, like,
Yeah.
I jumped, and I'm like, I knew that jump was going to be this day, and here I should have not jumped.
Right.
And should have is a big word, but you know what I
And
mean.
that's life. It's going to present it to you again. And which is like a serious obstacle is like, all right, we went down this path. Let's see how young Mark Angela does on this time. And like until we learn the lesson and start going it, we're just going to
Yeah.
continuously
You have to
like
climb that
repeat
mountain
and,
every
and,
time.
level up in these different ways.
And this is the beauty. Like, I love how this conversation is spiraled, because the only way for you to then have that same situation and make a different choice is to be connected with a different aspect of self or your character.
Yep.
Right? Who do I have to be when I've flubbed this jump off this diving board all my life, and to finally nail it, I got to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to change the mentality, because if you get back up, climb the ladder again, do the whole thing, and then if you're the same person, you will make the same decision. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We should write a movie.
But I love
It's just a movie of us being at the edge of a.
We are writing a movie right now.
Great.
This
It's
would
recorded, too.
be a phenomenal like YouTube, like Jay Shetty
Jay
style.
Shetty
this is totally Jay Shetty. Hey,
Who
so
do you need to be? And then there's just like the
little kid slow mo jumping off the diving board. Jay Shetty
Seraph,
just
you were inspired, right? Like drop in the water.
yeah. Well, I love the fact that, like, the feminine at the table brings the embodiment wisdom of, like, your body knows, right? And I think that's always been true for me, and probably for all of us, more or less. And so it's like you want to shorten the time between the feedback of your body and you actually consciously listening to that shit. It's like, and this is, and man, there's like an interesting rant I could go on and run through a couple characters, but I'm just going to stop there because
We can go Joe Rogan if we need to. I can listen to it on my car ride back to West Virginia.
No, you have a 5-minute voice message you need to listen to.
Please, yes.
5 minutes. No, but I would love to hear. So, what do you think the clear differences are between kind of the past self Alex Fairman version and the new James Seraph? Like, the way I kind of experience it is very Tyler Durden, Jack-like, and I love, of course, Fight Club. For those of you who are not catching the reference, but the that component of it is like my version of it is kind of like, what would Batman do?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
that's my recurring question.
Yeah,
it's just like a trigger that I'm like, okay, that brings me to a different. What it does, it's not that it makes a decision. It's that it brings me to this is a moment where I make a decision.
Yes.
That's it. It's not the decision. It's not what actually Batman would do. It's there's a decision. Change your state. Change get off autopilot for half a second here and get into another mind state where you're feeling around body. I would even go as far as soul to make that choice. And I know that you've been talking about it for some time.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's the character differentiation and what made it the jump at some point?
Well, I definitely fuck a lot better as James.
I believe that.
No, okay. So I think the big thing that happened is a lot of it had to do with risk. It had to do with the risks I wasn't taking. And particularly with regard to music, which is a very vulnerable thing, you're sharing your soul with the world. It was like, I'm going to do this now or I'm going to regret it later in life. So I better start doing this. Is also around my relationship to perfectionism, because I am a perfectionist. And it was just like, I looked at the perfectionism and I'm like, this is going to kill my dreams if I continue to be this way with my creative process. Because I'm the type of dude who needs to dream out loud. I need to just like be messy with my shit. And the universe is going to facilitate the perfection later. Like when I'm 50, all this stuff is going to be perfect diamonds. But right now, you're just going to have to watch me go through everything I need to go through. You're going to have to listen to me like howl and scream at the moon for a while and like say all the shit I need to say and do all the things I need to do. And like, sorry, it's not going to look too pretty. But that's the agreement I had to make with myself to give myself the permission to go through the journey, right? So I haven't even really started being James Seraph publicly that much yet. What I've been doing is sharing my music. I've been sharing like
some characters, some
controversial ideas. But there's a whole nother level to this that's years and years out and years in the making. That's like a plan, right? And so it's like I'm planting and harvesting all of my seeds right now that later will be understood for what James Seraph is. And it's also, it also has to do, and this is, I think, if you want to create a really dope ass character, you got to like tie it in with your own deepest fears and your own deepest, and the fulfillment of your own deepest fantasies. Right. So for me personally, I have one of my fears has been, as I've like self-reflected, is that I'm going to like step into some big leadership roles and I'm going to get it wrong. Because I know in other lifetimes that probably happened, right? I lost sight of what it was all about and I don't ever want to do that again. And most people don't want to make mistakes and that keeps them out of the game. And that's in some ways kept me from fully showing up for what I'm capable of doing, right? And I was like, shit, if I'm going to actually have a chance of getting it right or of like living a really great life, this life, I got to give myself permission to get it wrong. So part of the character of James Seraph is that like he's learning and he's messy, and that's built into my expectations for myself. So when I launch a new program or I start a new business or I like put something out and it's not received well, I have no problems. I expect that.
I like that. I like the idea of like, I accept the messiness.
Yeah.
That's a great.
It allows you to progress faster too. So one of the favorite quotes or kind of lessons from Ryan Holiday, who's an amazing author, speaks a lot about stoicism, was that whenever he was taking off in his writing career, he was switching from, I think it's like American Apparel or somewhere like that, working, like leading the marketing team. And whenever he was trying to fully take on his, want to become an author and a writer, he was like, I wanted to put out 2 blog posts a day on these different networks so I could learn in 30 days what would take me 6 months to learn. He's like, I was purposely looking for how I could improve.
Yeah.
And then also like, and I love what you said earlier was like looking at what will it be at 50 or what it'll be like. I have like these different ideas, like what do I want to achieve at 30, which is 5 years from now. And like whenever I started working with Mark, I was like, I'm going to dedicate myself to learning this skill for 3 years and see what I can fully foster in it. So I think really tapping back into like what are those goals and like what's on the bucket list, what's the impossible list, and like what you're trying to achieve, big picture, and like maybe that's once a week, maybe that's once a month, maybe that's once a year, maybe a little bit more often than that, but like really stepping out and being like, all right, what's the bird's eye view, what am I really trying to accomplish it, as opposed to the instant gratification or the instant fear of how people will perceive you.
Right.
Well, in any of this, like one of my favorite quotes, and it's always pinned to the bottom of my desktop. It's Epictetus, who is one of like the main Stoic philosophers. It says, if you want to grow, you have to be okay with being perceived as, now I'm fucking it up, but foolish and stupid.
And now to channel Jordan Peterson, right? What does Peterson say? He says, now when you begin the journey, you have to be the fool. You have to go out there as the fool. That's the only way to start.
See,
because you'll never become the master or the sage
repeating.
unless you have to become the fool. So, well, I thought about that for a while, and Well, it's true.
Well, and it all kind of comes down to like, so you're birthing a character.
Yeah.
And as children, like, what child do we not laugh at them all the time because they're like cute, but it's just because it's like goofy. They're goofy because they're figuring that shit out. They don't like get up and like stroll across a thing. They like get up, they fall over, they end up with their face in their like shitty diaper or something. Like it's funny because they're figuring that shit out. And anytime you birth a new character, that's happening.
But you
Yeah.
still support that baby. And then you'll be
Yeah.
surprised once you do. But it's just like, that's another point is like, once we actually jump out into that new identity, we might be nervous about what somebody will think whenever I change this character and we come down
Good
this
point.
line. And then you'll really see like who's truly got your back and who's like
Yeah.
stoked and you're
Who's
just like,
family
yeah,
and
like, it's like,
who's
what was I
just meh.
overseeing about? Like, all my homies are like still love me, like my family's there to support me, and like, and maybe some people do shut off there, but it's kind of like, oh, just quicker, like I needed to learn that lesson and I need to end that relationship.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of nice whenever you do step into it, like, oh, you know, people are gonna pick this baby up every now and then.
I'm always I'm partially happy when some people if people choose to step out because of a particular character element of who I am. I see this as like I avoided a collision later.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
for
I see
sure.
that as like, you know, because this is a tougher thing for me is like to know the balance between what is my character like truly, and then where is my character just being a fucking dick? You know what I mean? Like where, like that's a hard thing to balance, because what is the real version of like what I would say here? And sometimes that's like really great. And then there's a part of that that's like, and what part of my character should also evolve in
Yeah.
that scenario, right? And that's where the choices start to be had. Like I went to British Columbia recently, and I read a book that everyone fucking talks about, and I've never read, but I finally chose to read it, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I didn't want to read the book for a very purposeful reason, which is that I know that art in my hands is like great in some ways, but it's also what it will do is put me in question with, am I doing this to influence someone, or am I doing this because I am this way? And when you're at that level of like, because the other thing with storytelling is once you've told a story 1,000 times, the story is not about what I'm saying anymore. I'm not in my head, what do you think about my story? I'm in my head or in my body looking at like, okay, where did your eyes go? What are you thinking? Where did you light up? Where did you have a reaction? Like what is tweaking? And then how do I bring that story to the place that I want it to go to with you? And there's a fine line between being fairly enlightened and like conscious and, kind of conscious of your body, conscious of the words you're saying and the response that they're getting. And then being a fucking narcissist who's like, oh, you're just a pawn in the game. And now I'm seeing this way that I can puppeteer these different elements. And that's a tough balance.
And that's the relationship with power,
Yes.
right? And that's governed by the sense of one's conscience. And if you'll allow yourself to wield power and have it be okay, and for what purpose do you wield it? It's like, it's interesting, right? Because all of these things we're talking about as they spiral in towards like a central core have to do with like what's the most authentic expression of who you are in this world, right? What character, are you going to dive down that rabbit hole? Are you going to really pick up the influence sword and like learn how to use that thing? Right? And is that okay? And can you handle that level of like, cause you see a lot of people who they don't possess power possesses them.
Totally.
I'm the best. I'm the greatest. Right?
He did a phenomenal job building character.
And I will
and
say
he is
that. There's a lot to learn from Trump about character. Totally. Because he's playing a character. Like
but he's so entrenched in it that he lost sight of what is true or not true.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by like, even though you could be really good you could be a phenomenal character who is incredibly powerful and incredibly responsible with that power, but even just enough time could erode that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's why some of the people who change the face of the planet, are cherished by some and hated by others.
Yeah.
But there's like a real, I don't know, there's something like kind of twisted in those different pieces. And it's kind of, difficult. It's difficult to navigate because I personally find a lot of people, particularly in the power one, a lot of people have a knee-jerk reaction. And so I know that you're a part of my tribe in a big way. The way that you recognized the power I was yielding, it was like in that moment that I was like, okay, so you are tracking the same metrics or the same, like you're looking at the same pulse. That's how I feel with you all the time. And I know you feel that way with me too.
Yeah.
That's why when I was to speak it. But
Yep.
when you're tracking those different like metrics, everyone has kind of different metrics that they're paying attention to.
Yeah.
And there's something, it's something difficult about a knee-jerk reaction superpower, right? There's some superpowers that are like not knee-jerk reaction at all. Like I think Samantha has a superpower, for example, of like she radiates care, and everyone, like for whatever reason, she can like just wiggle any problem out of you. Like she's phenomenal at it. Like it's incredible. It's like I could be super mad and she'll come and hug me and just wiggle me, and I'm like, oh God, like why is it that you could just like bring me right back down to my body, I guess, or in another layer of my core. But there are challenges that come with. There's a nuance to the knee jerk one, and I what I love or where I'm learning a lot about it is comedy. Comedy is the way I'm studying. Okay, like where is the knee jerk now, right? It's like the front lines between PC culture, politically correct culture, and knee jerk. Like that's where it happens. That's where these battle lines are decided. That's where the lines in the sand are going down.
Yeah. Well, I think you're talking to something really interesting about Samantha's power versus your power, and the way these things work.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is like connected to chakras, and it's what fascinated me about the chakras was basically it was a model that explained all the different powers you could attain in a life.
Yeah.
And then you would see the results of each one.
Yeah.
And it ties in with like character. It's like, okay, well, what are your in your natural powers? And let's like bank on those. And then like, what's something that you really want to develop that like maybe scares you? Because I've also found, so this is interesting. Your ego is constructed. I'm going to kind of take us on a slightly left turn here, but we're going to just go. So your ego is, in the theory of ego development, the ego is actually developed and structured most frequently around wounding. Okay. So the wounding you experience, the pain you experience, the ego is a response to that pain to give you a persona that you're in control, your life is good, you don't need anything, you're set. And so as a result of this, oftentimes the area of the part of ourselves that we fear, or the part of ourselves that we resist or judge in others, is actually the area of our own greatest liberation. And this is another thing about James Seraph, is like Alex Fairman is like, I'm super smart, I'm very like, I'm entrepreneurial, I'm creative. And I do have a good heart, right? But what's the area where I am scared? It's around areas of conflict. It's around areas of like wielding power. It's around areas of like raw primal sexual attraction or dance or the sacral. Basically, these are all the energies of like the root and the sacral. Those areas scare me growing up because they weren't okay for various reasons. So as a result, James Seraph is also a character that like I'm in those dojos all the time, and I put myself in those places, and what I'm finding is like
Much more red.
Way more red. And I'm finding this alchemical like healing for my soul in that. Like I went out the other night and I went to a club, and I just like I went out with a bunch of friends. I've like befriended all these strippers, and I became friends with them. And then I like went out and I just like danced with them for like hours, and I like suck at dancing normally, but I'm like getting better. Right. And I'm like, whoa, this is so fun. Like, this is this other part of me that I love that I've like never explored. Right. You know, or it's like being out on the street, and it's like normally when some dude like says something to me, I won't say anything back. I'll just like keep my head down. And now it's like some dude says something to me, and I'm like, I'm ready to go, you know? And if I get my ass kicked, that's cool. But like, this is the character I'm in now. So the powers are interesting, right? We share a power. For sure.
We share similar superpowers.
Yeah.
We have slightly different angles on other superpowers.
Yeah.
And many people have that like balance between am I using this power responsibly, and am I like oversaturating that power? And that's kind of like the thought process that I was in more recently, which is like, okay, I've figured out some of these powers. Like I've figured like this is, and not to say that they're not going to require work and whatever in the future or whatever, but I've kind of done this.
Yeah.
So now let me like add in this other thing that I know is a very potent chemical mixed with the other power.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's opening a door, it's a gate.
Yeah.
That's opening to like a world with like a lot more attention on that power, if that makes sense. Like you can like really, you can really enter the limelight and burn bright if you kind of combine two powers. You could be like really well known for this one power, but if you're able to combine two, now you're like really bright in the world.
It's like the Hadron Collider. If you can bring those two particles together,
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
creating
Yeah.
the beginning of
Yeah,
the
well, who
universe.
knows, right? Like, yeah, who knows in some ways, but it is very, 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 very potent when you're like, like you're combining these two powers, and it feels challenging to like know where and when to do that. When do you lean in, or when do you like continue down your path of mastery?
Yeah, well, that's right. See, that's the thing. So the other thing is that like in the chakra world, we all have a compensatory primary chakra we rely upon as a default. It's like if you got a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. There's like for some people, it's just like, dude, it's just their root chakra. It's like fucking conflict, get it out of my life, attack it, like you're out of here, like done, right? Like that energy is one. There's like their will is like, oh, I'm going to figure out how to like make this like plan go the way I want it to go so that I'm where I want to be, right? Or there's like communication. I'm just
Overprocessing it.
over processing. Yeah. I'm just going to sit here and just breathe. I just right. And then there's like the like speak it out and just blab it all over the place and hope something changes, because sometimes it does if you speak about it long enough, right? So there's all these compensatory patterns that we have. Right. So it's also about learning like, oh, what are all the tools in my tool belt and which one do I use now?
Yeah, if you can eliminate the knee jerk,
Yes.
whatever knee jerk it is, right? Back to like, what would Batman do?
Yeah.
If you can have that like one little trigger that says, remove default mode, like it's like removing the mask for half a second, being like, okay, I'm looking at this with full like clarity here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the decision I want to show up on. And then you put back the mask, but maybe a different mask than the one you were wearing at that moment. See, if you had like a red mask on, maybe you would have had this, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Right? But if you removed all the masks,
Right.
look at it, say like, this is the way I want to show up now. This is the way I feel at this moment. Now all of a sudden you're choosing that consciously. The result is totally different. And How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. Well, the How to Win Friends and Influence People is a phenomenal version of, in most of these situations, these are the masks that work. It's a like guidebook to, if you're in this situation, likelihood that this mask works so much better is just like, and it's playing that book. And I've always known this. When I read it just the other day. I was like, this is the book where it's the mirror. This is like where all the colors combine.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And there's just some books that pierce that reality.
That takes a level of self-awareness, and like those skills is like once you start honing into it, once you start learning about it, you're starting to take like the Morpheus red pill, then you start understanding self-awareness at a whole other level, and you turn off autopilot for a second, and then can be conscious and be aware of this into the future.
Yeah.
Right. And then this brings us to the question of like, can you live without a mask or an ego or a persona?
What I was wondering the entire time you were talking is they're all masks.
Yes.
There's something underneath. And can you even like show that pure person? Or are we supposed to play with masks or supposed to? There is no right or wrong. But like, and how far do you want to and how far do you not? For me, it's like, that's the eternal question over and over and over again, is like, do I want to be like, it's a question of, do I want to be a balanced person? Do I want to be a mirror? Or do I want to be so well known that I did
red or I did yellow. And we're using colors, by the way. For those who are not understanding, those are like vibrations and they're chakra vibrations. Or light, comes in all these forms. But the idea is, it's like when I look at the characters
and
that we know.
Listen, we're running very successful businesses here. So if you're wondering if this is some hippie bullshit, okay, I need you to just open your mind for a moment to what we're talking about. Okay, keep going, Mark.
No,
so do you play with masks though?
Yeah, totally.
So I feel like I've spent from the age of 27, maybe 28, around that time, trying to remove all the masks. Like what you see is what you get or leave it kind of situation. And I understand the importance of masks in certain situations, but I guess I feel like my life had been a bunch of different masks up until that point, and I was just like, did not enjoy that.
See, I kind of grew up more the opposite, which is that I felt like I grew up in a world where everyone had a mask, and I was just like always super authentic and real, like you know what I'm thinking because I said it.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that I'm not like the type of person to speak something, and actually more now am I the type of person to think something, feel something, like give that energy sometimes non-verbally, but then sit with it. I'm much more calm than I used to be because when I didn't have a mask, I was just
So I wouldn't even call that a mask. That's just self-awareness and self-control.
Well, the question of the mask goes back to the character thing. It's like you have to live in life, like out there before we take a human body and we're all swimming in the cosmic pleroma, feeling one with everything, right? Like it feels great, but like you come here to experience what you are as separate from everything else, as unique. So like the point is not to not have masks. The point is to find the self-expression that's the most authentic.
Yeah. And the one that's most fun in certain moments.
Yeah.
And for me, what's incredibly fun, and this is why I feel like I can play with James, is because he's willing to put the mask. Like even the way, like I'll give you details of the moment where we've really truly connected. He basically came up to me and said, "Do you want to share what you basically said?"
Was this at Envision?
No. At
Superhero.
Right after the closing circle.
Oh yeah.
So what did you come up to me and say? Where now all of a sudden I knew we entered the game. Like it was like we literally pressed the start button on the game.
Okay.
And I want to know if you remember roughly what you said.
I remember something like I think I said something like I see what's happening. I see what you're trying to do, and I've got your back.
Yeah.
And
then the next statement you said was, "What's next, Chief?" Or something. That was basically what you said.
Yeah.
Because you realized I was in control of the container.
Yeah.
I was running that container at that moment in that particular mastermind.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't running it as well this last mastermind. I kind of opened to have more container with other people. It didn't work so well, or at least from my perspective, it didn't work so well. But in that moment, we were in agreement that I was running that container. So then the question was, so where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Right? Like we've gotten to this moment of group coherence. Now we have the opportunity where the gates are all open. And the gates are about to open even further because, thanks to psychedelics and all the other things that remove masks or replace masks or show authenticity, blah, 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 blah. But all of that was like, it is planned that way, right? Like there is a thought to the story arc of this mastermind that is beyond just, it'd probably sell more tickets if we went to Envision. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's the like rational way of explaining it, and that's the way I would explain it to another entrepreneur in many cases. But it's not the core of this game of how do we enable people and their superpowers to come to life. And that's like the core vision of for me personally, but also I think, Superhero Academy embodies it in a big way. Freedom culture, right? To empower and encourage all individuals to spread unique gifts to the world. Well, how do you do that? Well, you do that by, number one, allowing them to say, like, it's like the very hippie thing to say. It's like, all of you is welcome here. Number one, true. So you have to create that. Then all of you is welcome here. Okay, well, when all of you is welcome here, what happens when that shit goes off? Then we have to deal with that, right? And part of the reason to me why you came up to me and said that was there were certain people that were breaking those codes. Right? Like there was somebody, I won't name them, but there was somebody who decided that they were going to go down a particular, they were going to like take over certain things and they were going to be a particular way. And then you and somebody came and told me about it. You're like, oh, we had this thing. We were supposed to be talking about collaboration, but ironically, it wasn't collaborative at all, right? And I don't know, you know who I'm referencing. But in that, we start melding and creating this bigger story, this bigger narrative, and that's where it is important from my perspective. I appreciate when people play the mask, because at the end of the day, CEO, CMO, COO of Superhero Academy, well, is that not just embodying elements of, it's like taking responsibility for what that character has to do and play.
Right.
And no part of the play works if one character drops out.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have Hamlet or any Shakespearean anything without somebody playing all the right. So you can't have the characters play without the other characters.
Yeah.
And that's just important.
Yeah, you need all the Power Rangers.
But
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were learning it. We were learning it when we were kids for real.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Having
think
a
so.
moment. Are there colors, the chakra colors?
No,
I don't-
their colors are the racial signifiers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The pink ranger's white, the yellow ranger's Asian, the black ranger's black. Actually, I don't think the black ranger was black. I think it was the green ranger that was black. I think.
They might have. I think they were
remember
chosen
either.
less out of that context and more out of the context of kind of political correctness. You're right, or like identity politics, essentially. Like, let's appeal to different people in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean the pink ranger being female, like that's a more feminine color. Like self-nurturance is more of a feminine power.
But there was no doubt about the fact that the red was always the leader.
The red was the leader, and he was the root chakra. Yeah. So there is that.
There is that component. Like there is the certain
Yeah.
colors lead, certain other colors are kind of more accessory to the overall mission. They're all
Yeah.
super
It's also
critical.
the emotional,
Yeah.
Yeah.
emotional response that colors elicit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same with what's that? Is it called Inside Out or something? Where
Oh, the movie about
emotions,
emotions?
and then,
Yeah.
and they're all certain colors because of what those colors, like they're just related to that emotion kind
that
of.
animated
Yeah,
movie.
or they elicit that emotion even.
Yeah, it's like seeing auras. It's like people carry that in their field. But the thing that fascinates me the most about this is when someone wants to do something different, like transformation, because we all come out a certain way with a, like I say, a dominant compensatory pattern, a way to live. And then it's like, what happens when you're ready to change and you've been programmed one way for your whole fucking life? And how do you do that?
Ayahuasca.
Yeah. Well,
That's one. That's like the.
Oh my god! But I mean,
these-
it's true though.
it's true though. Like LSD, like these are tools. Like they give you choice, and they do. Like the drugs do open up different chakra powers and give you a different like way of responding. Like when you're on ecstasy, your way of solving problems is very different from when you're on cocaine.
Oh wow!
It's very different.
Yeah, cocaine is more red of a drug.
Yes, cocaine's a root chakra
Like a-
booster.
Yeah,
Ecstasy is a sacral heart opener.
yeah.
Right.
LSD is a
Creative.
It's a mind. You know.
Yeah.
But
I
so,
think ayahuasca is the more
Well,
source
yeah,
method,
it is. Yeah, it's a lot of things, but yeah.
you guys think that you can still open all those things or go through all those journeys the long way without drugs? Like they're not necessary.
No, they're not necessary.
They're
In
not
fact,
necessary.
in fact, they're not even useful insofar as you're relying on them. They just give you a frame for what's possible. But the goal is not to have to do ecstasy every time you want to, like,
Open
feel
up to
saucy
someone.
and turned on. The goal is that teaches you a frame for that you have to discover while you're sober, right? That's
Well,
Once
it-
you get the message, you can hang up the phone, essentially.
Yeah, and it lets you know where the boundaries are.
That's a Ken Kesey reference.
it's great.
No, but it lets you know where there is significantly more room in that chamber of
Yeah.
green or yellow or this or that. There's significantly more room than I thought there was.
Yeah.
And that
Where you were playing in a closet, you open the door and it's like, oh my God, there's a whole space out here.
Exactly. So I think the drugs are more of like a shortcut to that. I think there's a lot of people, we did the Wim Hof training at Valhalla at one point, for example. It's like, man, I saw some people having some spiritual breakthroughs doing breath work.
Yeah.
And it's all the rage right now. Everyone's trying to do the Wim
bath.
Hof.
Yeah, I mean, it's
cold
like
bath,
extreme
breath
situation.
work
Yeah.
methods. It's like it's all the rage in Bali right now, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's how you know that it's like it's eroding. Like
Yeah,
that ancient art is just being like bastardized by culture. It's like it's being Lululemonified. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the way that I see it.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's like yoga sculpt. It's like this is not about your ass. This is about your awakening from the illusion of suffering and separation. But like, fine, like get a toned ass if that's what brings you into yoga, because maybe later. No, but here's the thing, right? Like, this is like the question of questions that I'm exploring. Notice how this is the topic of topics. Well, this is the question of questions. And like, this is the thing I deal with, is that like, I'm, working with a lot of people who want to create transformation in their life. They come to me with like, and I have a quiz and I'm like, this is the area that's not working. Yeah, this is the area I've been broken in since I was 5. And it's like, okay, how do I create a container for them to have that transformation? Because I believe some of the best online courses, shameless plug, for how to actually do that. And these like experiences that are like guide you through every single day, and that like accountability is there, and it's like fun and gamified and little actions, and it works. But there's a level to which like I can take somebody right now from like a 50 to a 70, right? Or I can take you from if you're a C, I can take you to a B for sure. But I want to know how to take someone who's been a D, and through the principles, take them from a D to an A. And that's like the goal that I'm in the pursuit of. Like I'm trying to crack this code.
You help set the framework, but they have to do it
They have to do
themselves
the
for
work,
sure.
yeah.
You're just kind of like helping guide them
Yeah.
into that
Right now, it's like, the framework is amazing. The
How do you
principles are
inspire?
there.
Yeah.
Like I've understood all the mysteries of the universe. It's all right there, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like actually going through it and doing it. But the thing I want to know is, and this is the thought I have, is that I want to create these weekends. Okay. And these weekends are like, you come out to a city you're not used to.
So I'm in.
Yeah.
I jumped.
Cool. Awesome. That was the jump. Perfect. All right. So you come out and basically we're all going to operate by a different set of principles and awareness based on one of the chakras. So like you come to Red Weekend and it's only warrior mentality all weekend long. And you are going to engage through all these situations with that mentality that are being set up for you to learn what it feels like in your physical body to make fearless, bold, courageous, consistent choices and feel like a badass. Right? And it's all orchestrated so that you have no break. Because most...
Fun.
Right?
Challenging.
And challenging as hell, because you're like, oh my God, like if this is that area of your soul that's been atrophying your whole life, and all of a sudden you're just in that consistently and you can't escape.
It's like going to the gym and working that one muscle.
It's working that one muscle. It's like the guy who's only lifted arms his whole life and is like doing a
squat.
With me just like,
gotta do it.
Yeah. Like, and so that's like really turns me on and gets me excited. And so like, but that for every chakra, it's like all the people who are like for sacral, and it's like, I've never shared my feelings with anyone. I'm so scared of liking someone. I'm so scared of even talking to somebody that I don't know. Like I've been isolated. I've been sitting on my computer my whole life, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to socialize and meet someone new. Fuck. But like all weekend, like there's magic that can happen. Right. So this is where my head has been at lately.
It's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Stoked to get that up and running.
Are you jumping?
I'm curious what the working title is, but you don't have to announce it if you don't want to.
It's
Still in this.
they're basically just called like, well, they're like, I don't know. I like the word initiation for everything, but
The blue initiation.
I like it.
initiation.
I enjoy strong languaging around that, because you need, for that to work, you need buy-in.
yeah.
And so you're in or you're out, and you need to like really eradicate that piece.
Yeah.
We were watching Ryan's video yesterday, right? The one that I showed you that we shot over here, 3-angle shoot. You know, the first thing he says is like, "Hey, if you're here for this, get out." Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
love
Like,
that.
I think that is the kind of message that you could very effectively deliver, personally. And then it's also the kind of message, like, at least for me, I want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the event where it's like, everything, we're going to explore all the different things. It's like,
No.
yeah, if done in a particular order and with like some level of consciousness, but most events are done with like, how big's your follower count? Oh, how many tickets are you going to sell? That's it, right? And that's where the summits and mind valleys have gone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't want to go.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, have you ever gone? I'm like, no.
Or where all
Unless
those
they're paying me to
influencers
go,
are like,
no way.
oh, like learn how to live this, and they're all like on some infinity pool and God knows where and whatever. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that's just not.
Yeah, well, and
who rented their suite for one night to shoot that video and have those got those models to come hang out with them. Come on.
Yeah. It's a real thing. I think it's a real thing that people are we're searching for each other, but all of us are like showing up and at different times or switching masks at different times or doing different things. And when you're in an environment where everyone is switching masks at all times, you have no idea what soup of a masquerade ball you're in. You're like, what the hell am I going to do? That sucks. So you're spending almost the entire time hunting and defending. The entire time you're just like, okay, who do I need to connect to? What's my name? Like, you're in there like a mission.
At those events,
You're in there like a mission, and you're speaking to somebody, but you don't really care to speak to that person because you can tell that they're wearing that mask, so that's not the way you want to go, so you're looking over their shoulder.
Yeah.
And then that's the game, and everyone's playing it. And yet, even the person speaking to me probably doesn't want to speak to me, but like somehow we're both at the chip bowl at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's true. It's exactly the truth. You know?
For sure, that's real.
You're like, shit,
Those all dress just lured
That's
you
real.
in.
That shit is real right there.
It's real. It happens, and you're like, damn. So it's like I prefer a more cohesive homeostasis of an environment where that like. It's like, no, we're all going to go red for now, and we're all going to go this way or that way.
Yeah,
and
like
if we can like really
cohesion
buy in that.
Yeah.
Like if we can, then we're all going to have massive breakthrough because the amount of work that we can do in red, and I say work meaning it's not just that like physical, not like posting things on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm talking work meaning like energetic transfer of knowledge will happen if we all enter the same state.
Yes.
And it bothers the shit out of me when we want to have like endless amounts of diversity because that diversity muddies the soup.
Yeah.
It makes
or you
a
just need
brown
a
stew versus like a very specific, you know.
Yeah, but Mark, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that because like I think that people the fault. I agree with the fault you're pointing out of these events, but the reason that these events have that fault is because the orchestrator of the event just hasn't studied how to create cohesion and orchestrate group shared experience well enough.
And because they're operating from a place of what's going to make this event make money, and
exactly.
How do I want to book this venue that's going to look good in the video later that sells next year's event. So how is that going to make enough money to do the thing and blah blah blah.
Right.
And I know, and you know, running events doesn't make money unless you sacrifice on something, and that sacrifice on something is generally quality of curation of event. It's either you're opening up the gates too wide and you're letting more people in, so you make more money. Therefore, it fosters less connection, less cohesion. And or you are like letting the big guy, big woman, whatever person be on stage just because they're that person, and you're overweighing certain things versus a group experience. What you're creating is that the group experience is one person on stage speaking to other people in crowd, and that experience is not as good as a powerful group experiences where everyone is involved and engaged. And how do you engage is difficult.
Yeah, I just because people suck at it doesn't mean it's not possible.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm clearly willing to explore the possibility of it. But I had to, like, personally, I feel like I went too far in that exploration and I have to dial it back.
Well, that's same here, right? Like,
pendulum.
it's a pendulum. Like, I've run live events with like hundreds of people that like were super pure transmissions of consciousness that didn't make any money, and I've run like live events with like a few people that made a ton of money, but like weren't like the highest expression of what could have been, right? So it's just like we're finding that recipe. But the thing is, like, it's really the other thing is like we get to be ninjas, right? We get to go to these events, and this is the thing I started doing this year. This year, since I did the James Seraph, that I'm like, okay, I'm here to go find all these people who are here who feel that like longing for like a fucking real experience. And I'm like hovering around the punch bowl, and I'm like Morpheus. I'm just like, so you're here to grow your email list, or you want to know what the fuck is really the deeper issue?
You're back to your grade 8 self.
They're just like,
Yeah.
It's full circle. You're in grade 8 again.
I'm in grade 8 again. That's really where I want to stay. I just want to pull kids out of class and tell them about the universe.
That's where I really want to stay.
But I got these guys out of one of the last big live events, you know, with everyone's pitching stuff, and I like found the dopest people, and I was just like, you, let's go back to my place, and I gave people an experience that they will never forget, and that they're now like, oh my god, that was my favorite part of
This whole thing.
this whole thing.
Yeah, and that's in and of itself, that's like a form of, so what you're saying is, and you're agreeing to some degree, you're there, you're hunting
Yes.
meaning you're selective.
Yep.
And you're choosing your moments with,
Yep.
and with the right people, and you're in service to trying to bring them to
Yeah.
a shared experience
Yeah.
where it is homeostasis, where it is everyone in or everyone out, and the ones who are out just weren't invited. The ones who are in the inner circle of whatever experience you're curating, and then you go through that gate
Yep.
together.
Yes.
Back to the fucking thing, back to the moment of you're all on the right. It's one thing for me to go to the top of the diving board and jump off myself. It's one thing for me to coordinate with one other person and jump off with one other person. But how difficult is it to get everyone to jump? Holy shit. And, call it a cult or not, the person who convinced 1 million people to drink, or all those people to drink the Kool-Aid, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a level of mastery. Like,
For sure. Dude, for sure. No, for sure.
it's a level of mastery to have
The same
walked
because the
people-
same power that created that result can be used to
create-
organize people, to defend our environment, reinvent our education system, and change the world.
If the Amazon has a fighting chance, it's going to require that.
Yeah.
It requires that level of blind, direct action where people are coordinating in a way that is informed by something else. Now, that person who told people to go drink the Kool-Aid was informed by a wrong, they're not listening.
Yeah.
They chose to use their power and influence in the wrong way.
Yeah.
At least from societal perspectives. Who am I to say? Maybe they're all in heaven and we're the fucking ones laughing. And they're the ones laughing, and we're the idiots.
Well, that's certain because their life down here is difficult, and when you die, you remember how amazing everything is. But
Possibly, but what I'm trying to say is that it does require this. Like it's back to the kind of the meme of those who are crazy enough to think that they could change the world will change the world. That is true. That is very, very, very true. And the more that you can collect a cast of characters who truly believe that and are willing to do that and who are willing to go and put their time, energy, attention on the line, like the Vikings that set sail and are like, we're storming the beaches and burning the boats. There is a deep respect that I have for that type of person, regardless of the result.
Yeah.
Regardless of the result.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
why,
so incredibly honorable and powerful.
be a hero, be a villain. Don't be a sheep, though. Don't sit around and just.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I'm willing to try. I'm willing to be messy enough personally to know that I'm not certain which one I'm being in certain moments because I don't know the outcome, but I know where I'm starting from, and I know that I have at least the intention of trying to create an outcome.
Yeah.
Rather than just accept the status quo, because the
In
status
that
quo is
case,
not
you're never
working.
a sheep.
Yes.
Because you said sometimes you don't know which one you are, but as long as you're doing what you're doing with intention, you're never a sheep.
right.
I'm personally very rarely in sheep status or sheep mode, and I
Like picturing him doing that.
but it's
There's a lot of psychic communication going on in this conversation. Like, I feel like multiple things I've thought or other people have thought, I either say or they say. I'm like, this is the group mind is happening.
yeah. But we have an opportunity to create that event. I do believe it's people are longing for that event.
Longing.
Yeah. And I think more than an event, I think it requires deeper commitment. I entertain more of the, what would it look like to really be in the club?
Yeah.
Meaning you got to put some time, energy, money, on the line, and
Yeah.
everyone does.
Yeah.
All of us are in that same boat.
Yeah.
Even the organizers are understanding that it is not a path to profit. It is a path to something more than profit. It could be profitable in certain moments that lead to the opportunity of the next jump. But what is profit if not to reinvest in the next thing?
Yeah.
What, you know what I mean? I don't want profit. That's not the way I think about. I want more resources so I could do the next thing and try to have a bigger impact. But it's not. It's through it's back to the swoosh, just do it, and then whatever you think about it. The profit is the bottom portion of the pyramid, but the impact, that piece, it's irreplaceable. It's irreplaceable, and you see these collections of people erode. These bigger, larger events have eroded. People, this is not just my. By the way, I've never been to the event. It's the hearsay that I'm hearing from other people.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So it's not even about what I am judging upon these people. I always thought it looked cool. I would have loved to gone to Summit or A-Fest at certain points, but what I'm hearing is that it's kind of eroding. And people would say that about Burning Man too. I don't think Burning Man's eroded as much, but I think it was always part of Burning Man, just now it's more known. But that's the kind of there's an interesting culture. There's an interesting culture partaking, and
back in my day, we didn't deal with any of this bullshit. You just went out on your own, put up a house in the prairie, took care of your animals, smoke whiskey, drink cigarettes.
Throw a sandwich in the bag.
Throw
for 3 days.
Throw a sandwich in the bag.
Go for 3 days.
Go hunt. Yeah, no, it's true. There's that's the decline, right, of the light of consciousness. Is like anytime there's a light, everyone's like, oh my God. But unless you know how to just self-generate experience, right? Unless you know how to be a creator rather than a consumer, which I know we're all big on here. Unless you know how to take responsibility for like, I'm going to make this event the best fucking event ever through every choice that I make with full consciousness. Unless you have like at least 30% of the event operating in that way and not just being like, I want a great experience, feed me, like give me what I want. Like that creator consciousness is required. And that's why I think...
Well, that crowd's light.
Right.
Like it's like a fire. The way I kind of see it is like you can ignite the flame in the middle of the campsite.
Yeah.
And the fire's there and it's burning. But if everyone constantly crowds around the fire and nobody, then you're blocking the light from all the people outside the fire, and you're doing the thing that is beautiful for you, but is kind of detrimental to the light spreading.
Yeah.
Because the more you crowd the fire, the more that the people on the outskirts and the people outside do not see it. And so we're many times ruining our own thing, right? Like how many times have, like, I was talking about going to Peru. And there's a possibility, because where I'm going to Peru, there's this Machu Picchu is the sacred site that's near there. It's near Cusco. And the knee-jerk reaction, I asked one of the people I'm going with, hey, are you like willing to go to Machu Picchu after? And he's like, you know what? I almost don't want to go because it's so touristic. And I'm like, yeah, but like, are you really like, you could see it that way. And I agree that it's like ruined, like Machu Picchu is clearly saturated with people going there and taking the exact same picture. But is that like, does that shadow your belief that behind that wall of people hiding the light, that there isn't a fire there? You know what I mean? Like, do you have the trust that the fire is burning on the other end of that? Because I believe that regardless of how many people are there, I don't care how many people are there. I can tap into the
Machu Picchu's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Who cares if there's there's a reason why they're taking pictures of it. You're like overthinking it then. It's like then you're trying to...
I think there should be a new superhero character that's just like takes people who are like the tourists or the consumers of like ordinary human experiences and just like microdoses them with like substances without their knowing to create like transcendent experience. But like so it's like a controversial figure because you see he's like violating their free will and doing it against their will, but he's also like creating like all these traumatic, incredible breakthroughs in their life as the result of that. And then you're wondering if he's like a hero or if he's a villain. You never really know, but like people just get really high all the time.
Wasn't that the 60s?
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, I don't. But who was the
heard.
character that was like the archetypal like?
Yeah.
Would you say, like, I had this thought earlier today, because there's like conversation about psychedelics being given out at dispensaries in Canada, right? Like there's more and more psychedelics are becoming like a medicine.
Which ones?
Mushrooms specifically, yeah. And MDMA is being used in more and more clinical trials. I actually have a friend who went through the clinical thing.
Oh, it's
and all the
amazing.
very interesting stuff.
There was scientific results that these things are generating, John. I mean, we've got to double down and invest.
John,
early.
make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, and that was you nailed it. Is that a way to sedate? Like, is that a way that says we'll give you a piece of the revolution so you don't spark the revolution? Is that, you know what I mean?
Right,
like, how do you feel about those?
It's all this is the fucking thing, right? This is the truth for everything. Listen to me.
Speak right into the camera.
It's about consciousness and who's facilitating, right? There is no good or evil insofar as the thing is objectively good or evil. Yeah. It is the consciousness with which it is participated in.
Yes.
The drug
Exactly.
is who's the shaman and who's running that ceremony, and I'll tell you, the result of what's this, is this going to be a benefit for everyone or an escape?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Cheers.
Well, with that said, I think we've dove
Yeah,
deep into the
choose
rabbit
your
hole
character.
of characters.
Yeah, we stayed pretty on point throughout that whole
Yeah.
thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
We maintained a theme for once.
Yeah.
It's an important one, though.
Yeah.
It's a super important one.
I'll be curious to hear what the comments are saying once we
Yeah.
jump off.
Yeah. We love you.
Well, with that said, check out James Seraph's course on called Chakras. I mean, tell us. Tell us a
Yeah,
little
go
bit
to
about
if you
what
guys
you're
want
doing.
to come down the rabbit hole with me and figure out the area of your life that most needs healing. Just go to chakra.school and you can take the quiz there, or go to chakrahealingquiz.com. I'll talk to you about what that chakra is that you most need to heal. I'll talk to you about how you can start doing it, and then if you feel inspired, you can join me for other journeys. It has been a pleasure to be here with this crew, and
You'll be seeing more of him.
yes, you will be seeing much more of me in many other ways.
I can't wait for the weekend meetup. Can't wait to dive into my
Yeah.
chakra.
Yeah, we're going to go into that chakra, Garrett, all deep, all the way in.
Let's do it. Awesome.
With that said, all the links are down in the description below. If you loved it, if you hated it, you have a comment, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. We actually do really pay attention to those things. We actually really do want to engage with this community, and there's so much more that we want to share in these veins.
So go ahead and tell us what subjective projections you have about your experience that reflects back on your own humanity. And we'll be here to provide our own projections on the wall and attempt to make some sense of this crazy universe we live in together. But either way, at the end of the day, it's love. Love is all you need. And good, healthy boundaries sometimes, but mostly love. All right.
Ciao.